Well, you guys have probably noticed we have a brand new name. We're going to talk about where we came up with this and a whole lot more, guys. This week, we got Rob Peters with us on the 10 Second Podcast. All right, everybody. Bobby Roast Beef here with you. I got Bill Adams with me. We're back for another go-round. We have a good episode for you this week. We have a little sit-down with a colleague of ours, a fellow New Englander, a speed quizzing host, of course, the one and only Mr. Rob Peters. Hang on. I got that. There we go. So that's coming up a little bit later in the show, guys. We talk about how Rob got into the business, what he's been doing with speed quizzing, some of the really unique, creative, one-of-a-kind ways that he's been engaging his audiences, and hopefully some of this stuff is things that you can take away and maybe learn a little bit about yourself. Maybe sort of stoke those creative fires a bit. Always very, very helpful. Bill, how are you? How's things?
Doing well.
Good.
Just had a massage today, so I'm kind of relaxed at the moment.
That's good. All those like endorphins are running, all the pleasure chemicals in your brain. You're all excited.
Yeah. And you don't realize how messed up your body is. And
yeah, exactly. Like, and then afterwards, you're just like, whoa, wait a minute. This is a fucking train wreck. We have, I mean, it's been a couple of weeks since we put our episode out, and the feedback so far has been really good. I know that you have gotten some comments on the Facebook group for the Speed Quizzing US hosts, which is awesome. We did also throw a post into the Speed Quizzing Pro Facebook group as well. And some of our colleagues from across the pond have been jumping in and listening to the show as well, which I think is fantastic because we're all one family under Speed Quizzing of hosts, and that's really, really good stuff. But let's first off, let's talk about this name right here. We had put out a survey and posted about that in both of the groups to see what, number one, what people thought of that they were listening to, what we should maybe do with this in the future. But one of the things that we had asked about was the names, like what we should name this. We got a number of suggestions, and though the post was anonymous, or the survey was anonymous, everybody who filled this out, had given us some suggestions for a name, and the winner was the 10 Second Podcast. That was the winner. We love it. It's good stuff. We appreciate it.
The link to it is the fact that we have a 10-second countdown.
Yep.
And I don't know how many times we've been asked over the years.
Can we change the duration?
Can I make the countdown longer?
Yeah. I need a little more time.
Just delay on when you hit start countdown.
You bring up a good point, though, with that. Is regarding, like, creativity, and I'll say the smallest amount of creativity that any host could put into their game is that amount of time before they, when they finish reading the question and when they start the timer. It doesn't have to be, always the same. And I'll give you a great example of one of the ways that I play around with that is sequence questions. Oftentimes I'll finish reading the question and I'll even add on to it. I'm going to wait till we get 3, 4, maybe 5, depending on the number of teams, responses before I start the timer. And I find that helps at least some of the teams where I am, and especially helps new players because they're getting hit with this brand new format that they haven't ever dealt with before. And they're just like, oh, I got to put this in order, massive brain fart. And it gives them a second to kind of like think. So that's one example, but like, Bill, you nailed it. Like, if you want a longer timer, just explain to your players that it is a final 10-second timer, that's what it is. And that's how the game is set up to be played. So
like I do it all the time. Like, on a harder question, I give them a little more time to think. But if I ask a question, what color is the sky? And I know they all know it's blue.
You hit that son of a bitch right away.
I hit it right away.
Yeah.
And they're like, and it kind of actually creates like this. They don't know when this. Sometimes it's like, oh, here we go. And it's kind of just like, hey, you start it when you want to start it.
Yeah, you kind of play with the tension a little bit between reading the question and then them actually giving you the answer and responding to it.
Yeah, don't think of it as this is a 10-second timer. That's all you get always. Think of it as hey, hurry up. You got 10 seconds left. Yeah. That's how I use it. Like,
that's the beauty of it. You have the freedom to start that timer whenever you want. So to answer that question that we get millions and millions of time, that 10-second timer is never going to change because it is the final 10 seconds that you're allowed. And that's really the most important part. You know, regardless of when you start it, like that's the most important part. So we felt that response, that suggestion for a name change was good because it was really clever. And as trivia hosts, we should definitely be clever. That was really, really good. A lot of people had thrown some other stuff in there, some good ideas, but it was something about this one that we really, really liked and kind of plays homage to, which is why we started the show with the 10-second timer this week. I think that's going to be what we're going to stay to keep on brand. And that's something that I really, really, really appreciate and like. Let's talk about the rest of that survey. We'll go through some of that stuff. It was a pretty good split, actually, for our second question. I asked, how often should we release episodes? And it was 38% of the people polled said as topics warrant, meaning sporadically. So as something comes up and people want to hear about it, if we have something of value, we go ahead and post it, which I think is kind of a perfect world scenario. We had a tie between, we had 23% each for two options here for bi-weekly and then once a month. They were tied at 23% each. And then 15% of our poll takers wanted to hear an episode every single week. Now, I would love to say that we could go ahead and do this, as topics warrant. So if we're really heavy with great content, that's great. But that is a great recipe for us to just forget about doing this and not keep some regularity. So a schedule is definitely a good thing. I think what we're probably going to do is go bi-weekly, and then if we have additional content in between those weeks, or as, the stuff comes up, maybe it'll go weekly for a short period of time and then come off. But we're going to try to go bi-weekly so that we can stay on it and deliver you speed quizzing hosts all over the planet, some great content, and also get engaged and get involved here.
Yeah, we'll just call them specials.
Yeah, exactly. We talk about very specific stuff, and we'll go ahead and lay into it. The next question I put in there was, would you like to be featured on the show? Leave a name and email, and then a link will be sent to you to schedule a slot. We got a number of you that want to be on the show. We're going to get to everybody at some point or another. Some of the hosts that had been on my podcast previously and had already, you guys are going to go to the back of the line. We want to make sure we're getting new folks in here immediately. And we're going to go ahead and have a little bit of fun with that. Rob Peters was one of those hosts that never made it on to the original Trivial podcast that I was doing. So I saw he was one of the names in there, so we just bumped him right up so that we could get caught up nice and quick. It also helps that we're in the same time zone, which makes it much, much easier for scheduling and stuff. So we will get around to basically everybody who had dropped their information there. And once folks start hearing other hosts on this show, we're probably going to see even more people reaching out and trying to find out how they can get on the podcast. We'd love to have you on there. Next question is this. It was another multiple choice. What are you hoping to get from the show? And this was one where a lot of folks were able to select multiple items. And I even put an other category there where you could submit your own, and we'll go through those too. 100% of everybody polled said that they want to know game format ideas, which I kind of thought was interesting, Bill, because the game format, even though speed quizzing is a game by itself and it's got kind of rigid ways to do it, a lot of people change their structure, whether it be point values or the style of rounds or how they break things up. So that's one thing that we're going to talk to, especially when we have other hosts on. But at some point, you and I should break down our own game formats and talk about how we got to that point. In fact, I have a really good story about mine, and there was a change just after the pandemic. Once things started to open up again and I started working again, there was a change where I made a big shift, and I really like the way it works right now. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get to that. The next one was another tie. We had 85% each for how-to info and business strategies. This is tricky. How-to info is easy because that's the stuff that we're primarily going to talk about, like when it comes to stuff like different features, hidden features, making things work in tricky sort of environments. We'll talk about some of that too, and we're hoping to get some of our other hosts on to have that discussion with us. But when it comes to business strategies, all we can really do is just share our own info and not necessarily guide and say this is what you should be doing per se, as far as the way it comes from Speed Quizzing officially. So understand that, folks, that Speed Quizzing is never telling you how to run your business, because that's your business. It's just more or less that, we can share our own practices and our own opinions, and hopefully everybody can learn a little bit that way.
Correct.
Next one was 77%, and this surprised me that it was so high. 77% of you said you wanted to hear troubleshooting tips. That's frightening to me that you guys don't have an idea already on how to troubleshoot some of the basic stuff, especially considering that we have such a good group of folks on the Facebook groups that are sharing quality information. I don't know if this is primarily people that are looking for some kind of a magic cure-all that they can just go to all the time, but
yeah, there's no magic key, there's no magic potion. It's kind of there's just, you got to be able to kind of work on your feet and go, well, this didn't work, so let's try this. And there's steps. There's definitely steps to everything. You have to all right, start here. You don't want to, you can't start a race at lap 199 or 200. You have to start at the beginning. So if you don't have all those other things in place, what you're trying to get to at the other end makes no sense. The same thing we'd much rather you call us if you're having an issue at an event. Call us at the event. Don't call us 3 days later at home.
Or the day of that event the following week. Yeah.
The next week, because we can't fix it. And we can't fix there's too many variables going on at the venue that we can't do at your house. You can't change your channel at home and it works there, but get there and now it works because... And also, we don't know the devices. A lot of the stuff can just be device related at the same time.
Lots of time, it definitely can be. And there's one other thing that I want to throw out there, and this is something that we can attempt to try to teach and educate hosts about, and that's the idea or the theory of flow. So this one piece of equipment is doing its job, and we can confirm that it's doing its job because we know X, Y, and Z is happening. Then this next piece of equipment in the chain, there's an issue with. So a lot of the times when we're asking questions, it's because we need to, you could alleviate a lot of this stuff yourself if you were just thinking in that, folks are able to connect to the router. What's happening between the router and my laptop? My laptop's not having any issues. Everything's fine. Can I verify? Is it a cable situation? Should I go wireless to see if that rectifies the issue? Things like this. You need to isolate each individual component and then figure out what the issue could potentially be. And that's a lot of the time, I know people get frustrated when we ask them a barrage of what seems like unbelievably stupid and barely related questions, but we need to understand what's going on there. So that's troubleshooting 101, is isolating what the problem could be. Let's get to the next one. This was the least of the prefab ones, but 62% of you said you wanted quick question explanation. And I think that this is great. This is something that we should definitely be talking about. I'll tell you what, every single year that goes by, I find myself using quick questions more and more and more. One of the ways that I use them quite often is when I use multiple nearest wins questions in a game. And
I do too.
Yeah. Just because it's a great way to choose a team, I find. If you need to find a team to do something or offer a bonus to or a challenge or whatever it might be, it's a great way because there can only be one winner. So what I've done is I have, this excellent problem where I have folks that will follow me from place to place to place. And oftentimes what I'll do is I might borrow the nearest wins question from last night's game or one from the whatever my last game was somewhere in the middle of the game. And then I'll keep the one for the quiz pack for that day as a brand new fresh one for the end of the game. Well, when I go back, if I know a team has already been exposed to that question, I 86 that idea. So it used to be that I kept a folder full of nearest wins questions that were just random with about 100 different ones. I'd grab one at random and throw it in there. If they happen to get it once before, hey, they got lucky. Now what I've done is I will get a little bit creative, again, thinking outside the box, and I'll come up with some kind of a time-sensitive thing. How many followers are on my Instagram? How many followers are on my podcast Instagram? How many likes does my page have on Facebook? Things like that. And I'll look those numbers up and I'll make some changes, and then it's right there. Sometimes it'll just be, if I have coins in my pocket, I'll just count them and say, I have X amount, I have less than $1 in loose change. What's the amount in dollars, or whatever it might be. Something like that.
I've used those too. I've actually used those too when I think someone's cheating.
Yeah.
I'm like, how much change is in my pocket? How much or this, that, the other thing, or something silly.
Yep.
Just because you're like, let's see if you can get this one there, buddy.
Exactly. Sometimes it's a good way to humble them. So, I mean, quick questions make easy work of that, but there's so much more. When you're talking about using media, it's amazing. But some of the other ones that came in here I thought were pretty interesting. Somebody put anything. Okay, obvious. We're going to give you as much as we can. You know that's going to happen when you ask somebody a question. Oh, I don't know, just whatever you got. This one is pretty good. Networking, question formatting, new ideas for software updates, and creativity. We're going to work on creativity as much as we can because I think when you are a organically creative individual, you can get the most success out of speed quizzing. When you think for yourself and you're coming up with ideas that are organic to you, you do yourself a solid as far as building up more engaging ways to keep people. And you can take ideas from folks, but riff on them and just make sure that they come up, and you're doing them in an organic way. Don't force it. This other one has a lot right here. This is the last one for the suggestions. It goes, I'd like to hear more about upcoming features. 100% we're going to talk about that. Absolutely. As they come up, we're going to dive into it and discuss new features, how to use them, et cetera, et cetera. I love the teaser about the team photos. I can't wait. That is something that we are very excited about, too. I haven't even played around with that yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I have been mentioning it to my teams that it's coming because I think I'm going to take that and riff with it a little bit. I'm going to actually make some logos for my teams and sell them to them. Business plan, ka-ching. It's a little bit of side cash. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'd also like to hear about similar apps. Regionally, I have an app called Tincture of Trivia that gets all the big town-wide contests. I've tried pitching speed quizzing 4 years in a row for these events, but I always get we're familiar with Tincture and we'll keep doing that type of response. I understand that. I totally get it. We're probably not going to dive into any specific other products, and here's why. Speed quizzing is entirely different from every single other product out there. You want to know how I know, Bill? Because you and I are on the front lines, and we've dealt with a lot of the competition that things pop up. We hear it all the time. People say, "Oh, it's kind of like Kahoot." Yeah, maybe one style of round might potentially be like Kahoot. Oh, it's like using crowd trivia. Well, in the sense that there's multiple choice.
This is how I look at it. I mean, yeah. There's a bunch of apps that are like us.
Yep.
And there's a few things that they all kind of similar. But, I mean, the one major thing that we always have to say is, in all honesty, for the most part, I don't think there's anyone else at the moment. There is one company in the UK, I think, that does it. We don't need internet. Unlike all the other companies.
Yep.
Because all they do is put their time and effort into... I'll just use a browser because it's simple.
Yeah. And using a browser is cute and nice, and it will certainly get the job done, but you don't get the immediate response. You're at the mercy of the connection of the internet that you're using. And that's really what separates us. Yeah.
Like, I've had games where I did trivia.
Yeah.
Powered the hub off of my laptop. We lost power in the venue, like right as we started. And I did 3/4 of my game
on battery power,
talking real loud and running off my laptop. I go, because they could all still play. I go, look at that. But if your internet went out because the power's out,
everybody's leaving.
Everybody's going home. See you later.
Yep. I guess this isn't happening.
So I mean, that's the thing. I mean, and I always say too, if someone comes up to me and goes, well, I just use Kahoot, and I go, yeah, I like being cheap too, but just not with my my work.
Yeah. Well, another thing too, and this is why, we get into this a little bit with Rob Peters. We talk about buzz-in rounds. And there's very, very, very few products out there that really elevate the game, pun intended, to include such a unique play style. And like so much that you can't get that on SQ Web. You know, I mean, that is an SQ Pro exclusive feature, and it's super versatile and super highly engaging and can separate you from so many other folks. So that is definitely one thing that we run into quite a bit. One of the other things that I do want to run into here is a lot of people, they have this idea that, oh, using internet-based stuff is so reliable and it's nothing that, yeah, you know, the internet is great. It is relatively reliable considering the amazing shit that it can do. It really does deliver quite a bit, but when it doesn't, it sucks. And we learned about this a few weeks ago when the provider for the speed quizzing site had dropped, and it was of no fault of anybody else's, but, you know, the folks who were prepared and ready had no issues going forward with their events, but the ones who waited to the last minute and weren't prepared, by using a local area network like we do, you put yourself in a situation where you're prepared. An internet outage is not going to stop you from being able to do your game. It may stop somebody from being able to download the app to play, but if somebody else in the room has that app on their phone, you could still do a game. You know, 100%.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you don't have to. I get it. People want to say the internet's, but here's the problem. I'll tell you what, not all of my venues, people are always like, hey, can you fix the internet? It's not working on my phone. Yeah. I go, are you on my router? Because if you're on mine, there's no internet at all. But no, I'm on the venue's Wi-Fi. I go, yeah, I don't know.
No idea. Yeah, that
sounds to me like it's not a very good Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's only so much that you can do. But that's what we're getting at here, guys, is that, you know, by using this, you really do separate yourself and give your players the best potential. And one other thing I do want to address, there's a lot of people that will throw this up on the board when they're like, I see a lot of posts where people are having issues. If you take a look at the hundreds of games that happen every day across the world, so many events are going on. There is a tiny fraction of people that are experiencing Wi-Fi interference in that specific venue, or they're not prepared for the event. You need to broaden your scope and look at what's really happening. You know, if you and I, Bill, get a phone call, you know, on any given day, there are a bunch of other hosts that had fully successful events everywhere else. You know, none of these issues that folks are generally having are at alarming rates. You know, things generally run very, very smooth for the most part for speed quizzing.
Yeah, and 90, like I said, and of those people complaining, there's a few that were just issues. It's like a laptop thing. It's a individual, like, hey, this is something going on with this. We didn't know about
or
this
it's environmental to where they are.
It's environmental. It's like we could fix 90% of them with just like 4 different things, and they disappear. And it's kind of like some of them are over dramatic about them.
Yep.
If that's what I would say.
Yep.
And if you're having issues and you think it's the software, like I said, we can always, it's already on the website. You can always re-download the old version and stick with that for a while.
Yep.
But at that point in time, we can help you as much as we can too, because things have changed and things like that. But I mean, there are systems. It's the same thing. Know what you can do. You can always jump backwards a little bit.
Yep.
But same thing with like bringing back the change of the things here. Someone called us about an activation, and they were past the window. It was later in the day because it's kind of based on UK clock, but they wanted to change their booking to another computer because something happened, and they wanted us to like, hey, fix this for me now, and we couldn't get back to them because we were working ourselves and like right away. It's like, guys, you do know that there is an ability for you to go in there and actually cancel your activation without us even being part of it.
Yeah.
And then all you have to do is rebook it for the new computer, whatever you have to do. I go, yes, for probably a 24-hour period, you're going to have to use more credits. But then get a hold of us the next day.
We can fix that.
And then your blood pressure is way lower.
Yep.
You're not freaking out in front of everybody. That's the other thing, too, guys. The biggest thing I can also say, I mean, I learned in the beginning, don't freak out in front of your players.
Yeah.
Because they know. And if you freak out, it makes them feel like, I'm going to say it right now, it makes them feel that I have a bunch of hosts I know that have the same issue, that they can walk all over you because you don't feel confident
Yep.
So always don't act like anything's wrong. Rob talks about that kind of with his bag of crap game.
He does. Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, I'll always like just act like there's nothing wrong and you're in control. Be like, I don't know. I'll fix it.
You know, it's funny, man. I had this situation happen on Friday. I had, for the first time ever, my MacBook gave me an issue using SQ Pro. And I am, you know, it was one of these situations where, God, something was definitely funky with it, where the software basically just locked up on me. And I closed it and rebooted. And it was during a buzz-in round that this had happened. So I told everybody, I said, just sit tight. Lost a bunch of connections. I had looked in, I had checked my Wi-Fi analyzer, and, you know, the channel was clear. I don't know if that doesn't necessarily mean there wasn't something nearby that was causing some sort of interference. I actually had to do a full-on reboot. I started the entire computer right back up, did a full restart, got right back into the game, and it was fine. But again, like, it's all about the reaction. I was on the mic while some of this was happening, and I just said, you guys sit tight. I'm going to go ahead and get to it. We'll fix it. And I had, about 7 or 8 teams there on a Friday night in the secondary room of this restaurant. It was a good-sized crowd for this type of night in this establishment. And I held every single one of them through a reboot. We got set up, went back, continued with it. At the end of the night, as I was handing out prizes and talking with the teams, I apologize for the technical difficulties, appreciate them sticking around and not throwing the towel in. And it was fine. You know, I mean, like, we're human as hosts. Like, these things obviously happen. But if you can avoid ever letting them see you sweat, you're going to help yourself in the long run.
Oh, 1,000.
Yeah.
1,000%.
Yep, 100%. There is the next question was just to kind of get an idea of who our listeners were as far as their experience in hosting with Speed Quizzing Pro. We had divided it into different groups, and the majority of you are smack dab in the middle, between 4 and 7 years experience hosting speed quizzing. 54% of you came in there, with the next largest group being 1 to 3 years, and then the smallest group of 15% all being 8 to 10. I didn't fill out this form. You know, I didn't fill out this survey. Bill, you didn't fill this survey out either, did you?
No, because I know all the answers.
Obviously.
Speaking of that real quick, though, I love it when people walk in at trivia and they go, hey, can you give me the answers for tonight? And I go, I don't even remember what I wrote until I start the game and start doing questions. So, nope.
You should see the look of horror, because I get the same thing from people. But I explain to them, I go, I don't write any questions. I use exclusively SQ speed quizzing quiz packs for every single event. I don't edit any questions, nothing, because part of my show and what comes organic to me is that rawness of my eyes seeing that question for the same time, potentially destroying the pronunciation of a foreign language or something like that, or just like getting a chuckle because I know what's coming, and I find that it's a good sort of patter for me. Like, it works as the way I work to do this. So when I tell players that are just like, can you hook us up with the answers? And I'm like, dude, I don't even know the answers. I seriously don't even look into questions until I get here. So I just tell them, buckle up. And once somebody's gone through my game, they understand exactly right away the reason why I like to run it, you know, the way that I do. And I realize I'm in the minority with that. I know a lot of people like to edit their questions and go over them. And to me, there's a time and a place. Yeah. You know,
I like to do that because I have a problem with words. I
will do that.
And I mean, the easiest words, I know the word.
Yeah.
Like, it'll be a long word, but I'll know it. And I will just jack that word up. And I'm just like, I feel so dumb right now.
In bars, I don't mind doing that. If it's a corporate event, you bet your sweet ass I rehearse the hell out of those rounds. Or I've got rounds that I have crafted out of, like, great questions that come from the SQ database that I've used in the past, where I tailor these rounds in a certain way so that, you know, I probably have about a dozen now rounds that I will just use for corporate events. And I only run into situations when I have the amazing dilemma of being booked more times than the number of rounds that I have from one office, let's say, or one organization. So then I find myself going into some of the speed quizzing stuff. But even then, I'll just rehearse them and it's fine. You know, I'm doing a comedy event next year that I'm putting together, and I'm writing specialty rounds for this specifically around the banter. They're going to be very short rounds, and that's going to be something that's going to be well rehearsed. Absolutely, you know, not in front of a crowd, but I'm going to go through the motions beforehand to figure it all out. Let's move on here. This is a good question while we're on the subject of quiz packs. The question was, generally speaking, do you use SQ quiz packs provided question content? This refers to general knowledge only, no themes or music rounds. Because obviously, if you're doing a theme round, you're editing things and you're making things, you know, streamlining them. This is just about general knowledge, and it was a tie. It was a tie between 46% each said I use it and add some of my own content, and then I use it but edit it to cater to my game. A tie at 46% each. 8% of you said I don't use the quiz pack content at all, and then nobody, like I said, I'm the minority, I use it exclusively. That's me. Next question was, what router are you using for your events? And 77% of you are using the black hub, and 23 are using a yellow pocket hub. Nobody said that they're using the Buffalo speed quizzing router. I know that there's some people out there that are still using it, and nobody said that they were using something else. Yeah. This is a great question here. It just says, do you, A, use a single router to host most events, B, use a master router and repeater or extenders at most events, or C, use multiple masters? Nobody at this point that at least took this survey is using multiple masters. The majority of you, 77%, use a single router to host most events, and 23% of you said that they're using a master router and a repeater or extender in some capacity. Next question got 100% of the vote. It was, are you an entertainer, meaning a DJ, comedian, musician, etc., working at various establishments? B, an owner of an establishment that's working in-house, where you've got employees running your game? Or C, other, please specify. 100% of our poll takers had said that they are an entertainer of some sort using this in other establishments, which I think we sort of knew was the vast majority of the SQ host population anyway. Most of our hosts are disc jockeys, comedians, entertainers of some sort that are going out and then shopping this individually. We do have some folks out there that are establishment owners that are doing it all in-house, but it seems like they're a little bit more disconnected and not part of the SQ family so much. They're not really in the community as much. And then I think exactly. I think our final question, and I kind of had a feeling this was going to play out the way that it did. It was, my typical events are A, public events in bars and restaurants, B, private events, or C, a mix of both. A mix of both was the majority at 54%. Then public events in bars and restaurants at 38%, and then private events exclusively at 8%. There are folks that just use speed quizzing for private events. And I find that those are the ones that we end up, for one reason or another, needing to help out the most, because they'll put it down for a while. They might not do a string of events for a little while, and then they almost forget what they're doing. Or they need to refresh themselves, or they haven't touched it. Like the pandemic was one of those situations where everybody was affected, where they weren't using SQ Pro at all for an extended period of time. And then it was... Remember, we got all those calls and people were just like, I'm going to start getting back into this. What do I need to know? And we're like, nothing's really changed with SQ Pro. It just dive right back in.
We did some updates. There were a few things here and there, but
there were eventually some updates that had popped up. There was some stuff happening, but I remember at that time, most of the focus was on using a web-based platform for when everything was shut down, and that's understandable. But we see from a lot of people that book exclusively, private functions. And there are people that we'll talk to at trade shows where that's the way they want to run this game. They're like, oh, we're considering doing this for a private event. We have, specific events that we do that this would work great for. And it's true, it absolutely would. But those are the ones that have to, give themselves a refresher periodically to remember how things work. It's never admitting defeat if you fire up the program and invite some friends over with a pizza to have a little trivia night to get back into the swing of things. That's always a positive thing. Or you could book yourself for one weeknight a week at your favorite bar or restaurant and consider it a referral machine for other private events. Just saying. It's a great way to go ahead and make money and keep up to date with what's happening and keep in the practice of hosting really quality games. You owe it to yourself. On average, you could be making $10,000 a year extra for working a 2-hour trivia night once a week. So something to consider. Food for thought. I think, that does it for our survey. Thanks to everybody. Appreciate you guys for filling it out. Getting that information to us, we appreciate it. It gives us an idea of who's listening. And again, thanks to everybody who reached out with feedback one way or the other, good, bad, sideways. It doesn't matter. It's all good. We appreciate it. Coming up right after this, we're going to have a chat. Bill, have you had anything notable over the last week that with calls coming in, maybe some trouble support stuff? Troubleshoot. Anything as far as troubleshooting or anything that's come up that's been notable for you?
I'm trying to think here. We've had a few it's the normal stuff. A lot of firewalls, a lot of updated things here and there. It's just like the simple stuff, close and reopen. There is a new app. All three stores have the new 535 app.
Yep.
So those are all out and released.
Yep.
Just fixed a few things.
Brings us actually to a really good point. You make a good point there about the new app in stores. We did have a situation this week where a host had reached out inquiring about updating their devices. And one thing to keep in mind, folks, is that the age, and this is why we talk about the player's devices, when people are just like, I can't get the app, something's going on, I can't get this app, I don't know what's happening. Their device might just be too old for that current version of the app. And this happens not so much with phones so much, because as it's no secret, the companies that make these phones, they want them to, need to be replaced every couple of years for the most part. So generally you find very few people these days that are walking around with an iPhone 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the biggest part is, I know, some have talked about it. You don't do it. Some of us do.
Yeah. It's tablets in general.
Yeah, some people have Kindles, and so Kindle is technically an Android-based platform, but they also have their own OS built on top of it. So they don't release their App Store stuff at the same time we do, and they have a little bit of different play and stories that they have to mess around with to mess. So it actually took an extra week for us for the Android one, between the Android drop and then a week later, Amazon dropped it. But there are some people with older Kindles that are like Gen 4 and below, where Gen 4 won't update to Android 5 or above. And that the highest app you should be able to get is probably a 5.2, which it works with the software. It works. You just don't get all the new features.
Yeah.
So in the future, if you see Kindles for sale and you want to buy them, make sure they're 5 or above, Gen 5, so basically 2015 and above, and you should have no problems with going forward. But like anything else, Gen 4 was dropped out in 2014, so they're not exactly new machines.
No.
And so that was some of the stuff. It's some of those older devices won't update because they're not at a higher Android level, and we can only build for what's current. We can't build backwards anymore. They won't basically allow you stuff like that.
It's funny. I remember last winter I had a player who started coming back out very late to getting back into playing trivia, and had this same device that they initially started with, and actually had the old speed quizzing app before the new branding and everything still on their device, came up to me and said, "Oh, I need to update. I said, "Sure, absolutely. There's a brand new update." And unfortunately, they were not able to update because this tablet that they had, folks will buy a tablet and hang on to it for years because it doesn't see the use necessarily that their phone does. So it'll hang on for that amount of time, which is fantastic. But sometimes the updates are going to overextend beyond what they're able to update on their device. So I had a conversation with this player about, we got to update your device, and there was nothing available. It was still the same app that was showing. And I said, okay, this is going to be an issue. I carry my iPad with me when I do these games, and that is like, I don't like to carry tons of devices, but I have that iPad with me as like an oh shit, where if there's one team that's just like, oh, it's not working, and boom, I have something that's there, and I watch them like
that's
a hawk.
That's the reason why I have them too.
Yeah, I watch them like a hawk so they don't take off with it, and it was no issue at all. The next week they went out and they replaced their iPad, or they replaced their their tablet with something that was a little bit newer. I think they actually bought it secondhand, but it was a little bit newer. They were able to update, no problem. So just be cognizant of all that kind of stuff, because it definitely comes in.
Yeah, I'm sure 10 years from now, we'll still be doing this, and we'll still be taking calls, and people will be like, I can't update. And I'll be saying the same thing, being like, well, what, do you know what version it is? I don't know. It was my grandfather's from 01.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll be like, oh boy. And although actually we didn't have tablets in 01, so I'll be saying 09.
We'll 09. There you go. And here's the other thing, folks. We talked about this before. I had a couple of you ask, like, are these episodes going to run approximately an hour? That's the goal. Today we're going to blow way past that. I'm just letting you guys know that we that as far as producing a podcast for you, I'm looking at this for the amount of value. So I want to make sure that you guys are getting, if a show needs to run 2 or 3 hours, cool. You're going to have a couple weeks before the next one's going to drop anyway. Plenty of time to get caught up.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and jump into this conversation with Rob Peters from right here in good old Massachusetts. And we're going to get to know Rob, how he runs his business, how he's been using speed quizzing, all kinds of great stuff. Probably get some great ideas from him, too. I hope you guys do, for sure. And when we come back, I think we're going to close the show. And Bill, why don't you and I go over how we format our games?
Sounds good to me.
I love it. We'll see you guys in a little bit. All right, everybody. It is Bobby Roast Beef. It is this is our first on this brand new podcast, our first interview segment right here, and I can't think of anybody better to have on as our first guest here than this gentleman out here. He is your eastern part of Massachusetts official Rob Peters. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing well, and thank you for the compliments. I'm sure some of our listeners probably could have thought of maybe 20 other people, but
that's true.
I'm glad to be the first interview. That's awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Glad to have you, dude. It's very, very good. So, Bill and I were here, kind of prepping some stuff, and I put together a handful of like base level questions we're going to go through, and we're just going to riff off of these and have ourselves a good time with it. But to start things off, I am a sucker for an origin story. I have a feeling most of our listeners probably are too, and they just kind of want to get to know you and how you got into the business and stuff. So tell us a little bit about your business, and specifically on how speed quizzing kind of became a part of it and where you think it's going.
So I'll go back and start where I really began. And my roots actually began closer to your co-host up in Maine. Yep. I was attending a college in Maine and learned how to DJ there from one of the upperclassmen, and DJ'd a lot of the events on campus. And this was back in the late 80s, early 90s. I did some radio as well. I graduated, moved back here to Boston, opened my business, did some radio, had some part-time jobs. I went full-time in the business in 1998.
Yep.
And I have been doing game shows for a long time. And I began to see bar trivia popping up all over the place. I began to have some of my accounts actually ask me for it. And then I actually literally, because Bill and I have a lot of mutual friends, met Bill and learned about speed quizzing and this was back when you guys were pretty fresh. I mean, it was pretty new.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say I got in on the ground floor, but here in Massachusetts, in the eastern part anyway, I feel like I was the only guy doing this for a long period of time. And then the next thing you know, now I'm probably surrounded by about 6 or 7 other guys that or people that do this in my area. I love the product. I've been a big advocate of the product. In fact, we've actually had you guys on my former podcast to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's what's nice is through COVID, we had options, right? Like we had the virtual version where you could play online, and we moved a lot of our stuff because of things being closed down online. I thought it was a really innovative product, and it was a great sales pitch when we opened up again, because a lot of these bars and restaurants were intimidated by, oh, so I'm going to have people running through my restaurant again?
Yeah, exactly.
And when I told them it was contact free and they could play in their seats, and I actually taught the wait staff how to capitalize on that, it worked for me. And where it's going, I got to be honest with you, I follow a lot of the stuff. I see that there are a lot of things that are up on the horizon, obviously. The other thing that I love about the product is you guys are coming up with different things. Like you've got bingo. You've got different ways of hosting the game that work really well for me. And that's why I enjoy it.
Definitely, man. Definitely. Now, as far as your games go specifically, kind of walk us through how you generally make a format, how you kind of run them, and tell us, like, are there any elements specifically that kind of make you stand out?
Oh, there's a couple of different things. I looked at what the competition was doing when I first got started. I would go out to trivia nights and I would sit down and I would play. And it was funny because there are some people in my market who actually now have speed quizzing. I actually sat in on their shows and they would sit there and kind of give me the evil eye. They would give me the, what's this guy doing here? In some cases, it was pretty cool, though, because I became very friendly with these people.
Yeah.
And I learned what they were doing. And one of the things I found is it was question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. And then you had a break. And you had a long lull in between the questions and the answers being submitted, which I didn't really agree with, because anybody with a smartphone could go on and look up the answers. That's one thing I love about speed quizzing is it's very difficult to Google an answer in 10 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
But I went and looked at what other people were doing. And one of the things that I found that made my shows unique is I actually changed the format a little bit to fill 2 hours.
Yeah.
And we do stuff in between rounds. Like we do other point building challenges in between rounds.
That's
things
unique,
like minute to win it game.
Yep.
Last night, for example, I was at a campground and I had a 10-minute lull in between rounds 2 and 3, and we actually did 10-minute Simon Says.
Oh,
where the last 3 teams that were standing got 50 points each.
Yep.
And it's not just entertaining the people that are playing, but it was entertainment for the families that were sitting there watching me eliminate, 55-year-old men for giving me a high five because I would trick them into that. So I found that filling the gaps a little bit was a big advantage to me, and it set me apart because a lot of people, what are you doing between the lulls? You turn around and you just sit there.
Yep.
And if you haven't trained the wait staff, which is something we can talk about a little bit later.
Yeah.
If you haven't trained the wait staff to capitalize on that the right way, they're just sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah.
And they're, or they're scrutinizing, why didn't we get that right? Or how do we get more points in this next round? It also gave people who maybe weren't, rocket scientists an advantage, because maybe they had a cool skill, or maybe they had an original library card in their pocket. So the one thing I've done to set myself apart is I try to make it so that the entire 2 hours, yes, there are breaks, and yes, there are opportunities for people to order more food and drink if they're in a bar. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we're doing something more that kind of levels the playing field a little bit, because there are, as we all know, the trivia geeks, as I prefer to call them.
Yeah.
They're the diehards that they compete in trivia contests, and they're a team and they show up every week. And I love those people. But I also like the people who come in and go, you know what, I just want to play for fun.
Yep.
And maybe they, when I pull out the Walla Ballers and they're the ones that win, it gives them a little bit of a leg up.
Yeah. The way I like to look at it is like with those additional little twists and turns of the game, anything that you throw in there, I consider that kind of like water cooler fodder. It gives people something to talk about. And let's be honest, the best form of promotion for your trivia night is people talking about it the next day. If they're talking about the time that they had there, so like it's not even just about you engaging a crowd of people and stuff, because let's be honest, taking a 10-minute break so that they can even just if the orders have been made, just serve all the food and drinks that have just been ordered during the round, like it makes sense logistically, but to be able to give an element that kind of goes a little bit outside of the box is unbelievable. I have a story about, and actually I host some traditional bingo too. Very select accounts, but I have this one account that loves it. And the way we schedule it out is they give me a number of prizes and I break up the games. And what I like to do if we have multiple bingos is like I'll accept everybody who's got a bingo. I'll go through all their cards and then I'll do some kind of a challenge. And the winner of that challenge, it might be several teams that have to do it. The winner of that challenge ultimately gets the prize, and it's entertaining. I've got sound effects going, I've got timers and things that people are working against. I'm goading them on the mic, so it's like these little elements gives them a little something extra that maybe they weren't expecting from the general game format.
It's a great extra to do that, and I brought this up a little bit earlier, but it's also entertainment for the people who aren't playing.
100% it is,
right, and that's what I think also is a big win here. Is you're not just keeping people in their seats and ordering food and drink and playing trivia for 2 hours. You're also, people love that whole what's going to happen next thing.
Yes.
And I think that works really well for the people who maybe just choose to sit there and have a couple of beers and maybe a pizza and watch the game.
Yep. 100%. Couldn't agree more. You make a really good point. I'd like you to actually go on that tangent of training the wait staff, because this kind of goes into. I'm going to start with this next question here, but I think that your training the wait staff kind of lends itself in here. So, in your opinion, what do you think makes an ideal establishment to set up a weekly event? What do you look for?
It's funny. I think any establishment is game for this. No pun intended. But I think there are a couple of variables.
Hang on.
First of all,
you earned it.
You cannot as a host, okay, or a hosting company in my case, be the carry, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't be the one who's the only one posting it up on social media and getting the word out about what's going on. You have to get the venue to be your partner. You need to have them realize that, hey, we're in this 50-50. You know what? The other guy down the street isn't going to post this to the people on his social media.
Yeah.
So you've got to, I tell my venues when I walk in that if you expect me to carry the bulk of the weight, I have no problem doing that. But obviously, as they're telling me this, I'm also trying to gauge, okay, this means I'm going to charge a little bit more because I am carrying that. And when they tell me it's too expensive and how can we bring the rate down, I actually have a checklist that I give them. And I tell them, if you want to bring the rate down, these are the 5 things you need to do. It needs to be posted every week.
Yeah.
You need to have me come in and sit down with your wait staff and your entire team and do a game. Now, we do it no charge and call me crazy.
Yeah.
But having these people on your side is a huge advantage. And I'll go into that a little bit more in a second. They actually cough up prizes too. Like they'll do cash prizes for their staff. And they'll use it as a team building thing. But the ultimate venue is an owner who's willing to work with you and understands the fact that you're not going to carry the whole thing and that there is a little bit of a responsibility on their end. Venues with good social media also are key because you want to make sure that every week that you're doing something unique, that they're telling their clientele about.
Yeah.
I had one venue that we would put up a social media post, and we always put up a free answer or a free clue or some way to earn bonus points. Maybe it's Roland's birthday and you're going to come in and sing happy birthday to Roland. It's usually Roland's birthday, by the way, once a month.
Yep.
Because I'll make people go in just to give him a little bit of a jab and keep him on his toes. I'll have people walk in and sing happy birthday to him without him knowing.
There you go.
But by getting them involved and having them be part of the process and having them realize that you are doing more than the other competitors in your market, you can turn just about any venue into a good venue.
Yeah.
But I talk about the waitresses, and I've alluded to this a little bit.
Yep.
And this happened. This is why I woke up about this one day. I was at one of my venues, and I've been at the longest venue I've had with speed quizzing has been 5 years.
Okay.
And I was doing game shows at this place back in 2006. So I've been with this place for a long time. But I was sitting with bride and groom, who I'd met beforehand because we're detailing the wedding. And I got up to leave, and they went over, and I just asked them, I said, ask the waitress what's going on here tonight and play stupid. So I got up and left, and the waitress came over. It was the first encounter. So what's going on here tonight? Oh, we're having some kind of trivia tonight. I don't know that much about it. Now think about this.
Yeah, that's a problem.
This is somebody who is a face person for the venue, who is turning around and going, we're having some kind of trivia, and I know nothing about it. How likely is that couple, if they weren't a couple that I had planted, right?
Exactly.
How likely are they going to want to play?
Yep. Probably not so much.
So what I do is I sit down with the bar staff, and I sit down with the wait staff, and I walk them through a night.
Yep.
And I tell them, I start 15 minutes after our start time.
Yep.
That way there, that first 15 minutes, if you've got somebody who needs help getting on the app or needs help getting involved, you can get me to them and we'll do it.
Yeah.
I also do set some ground rules. For example, it's infamous, and I'm sure we've all had this happen, where you're mid-question, and one of the wait staff walks up and goes, I have a couple over here that wants to play.
Oh, yeah, happens all the time.
It happens all the time, and I tell them, don't interrupt me. But at the same time, I also will give them a bonus, because they're not just there on the night I'm working, right? They're there 4 or 5 nights a week. So what I did was I developed, I call them good guy cards.
Yep.
So when they're talking to guests about what's going on during the week, because it's always inevitable, somebody asks, well, what do you guys do here during the week? They have these cards that are worth 10 points for the customer, and they put the wait staff's name at the bottom of it.
Yep.
And we call them good guy cards. And on the back is the QR code for the app and the instructions on how to download the app.
Yep.
But on the front side, it says it's good for 10 points, and you have to hand it in before the final round to the host. So these people that maybe come in on a night I'm not there, get this card, and then come in on the night I'm there, and they have 10 bonus points to use.
Oh, gotcha.
So in a new venue, I'll tell you how I make this work. In a new venue, I put my money where my mouth is. I tell them the 8-week commitment, because when we get started, I tell them they have to do an 8-week commitment.
Yeah.
And I tell the owner, as part of this 8-week commitment, I'm going to give you good guy cards, and I'm going to tell your staff to hand them out even when I'm not here.
Yeah.
And every week I'm going to track who I'm getting 10-point cards from.
Exactly.
And what I do at the end of 8 weeks is I tell the staff person that I get the most cards from gets $100 cash out of my pocket.
No shit.
You never have seen these people be more aggressive.
Yeah,
especially on a night where I'm hosting. They hand them out like water. Like every person that sits at their table, we're doing trivia tonight. These are the instructions to play. You use your smartphone, and here's 10 bonus points. Hand it in.
Yeah, exactly.
And the cool thing about it is
That's
I've
awesome.
made my money over 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And I've helped them build their business by using their staff to promote it.
Yeah.
It's almost like free labor, except for the $100, but the $100 ensures my job security.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I started doing that 3 years ago. I actually do a bar right outside Gillette Stadium in Foxborough where the Patriots play. And I started doing that 2 years ago. And it's funny because we still use the 10-point cards.
Yep.
I haven't given out $100 since that first 8 weeks.
Yeah, sometimes because once the ball's rolling, they get they kind of forget about it.
They still use it.
Yeah.
So it works really well.
I'm curious, Rob, when you go into a new venue, a new establishment, Do you have a policy set up for like, I'm gonna provide you with X amount of signage? I'm going to list you here. Like, how do you work out all the details there?
I give them signage. I have the generic stuff that we were using when we first got started. I actually have taken a lot of the art files that Speed Quizzing made available, and I modified them. So I will give them a set number of posters, a set number of table tents.
Yeah.
But that's on that checklist, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If I determine that I have to carry the bulk of the load, and they say to me, "How do we bring that rate down?" These have to be here every week when I walk through the door.
Exactly.
And even if I walk through the door on an off night, I still need to see them here.
Yep.
Because I actually do frequent a lot of the places that I work at.
Yep.
I feel like it's paying it forward. I do have a regular checklist that I give them too on hot things that are going to help this take off. You need, hit your beer distributors up and give me swag, because I'll use swag for about 20 different things during a show.
Sure.
A Budweiser key ring, for example, is a great motivator when you say, I got a prize for the first person to come up and show me a credit card with the sports team logo on it.
Yep.
And that goes over huge, except at Gillette Stadium when somebody shows up from Buffalo and shows me a Buffalo Bills card. That just, you got to give them something more than that. But a lot of bar owners, a lot of the beer companies, for example, the distributors, they work on a point system, and a lot of owners don't even use their points to get a lot of swag.
Nope.
So, but I'll tell them, I'm going to put you up on Speed Quizzing, which I think is a really cool feature, that the Speed Quizzing site, when you log in and schedule activations, you actually show up on their directory too, which I think is huge. And it's something that if you do it right, it's like, you're not really doing much more work to do that.
No,
I will
definitely
put them up on. I will put them up on Facebook, and we'll put them up as an event.
Yeah.
So on our Game Show Parties of Boston Facebook page, you can look, and you'll see that we're at Citizen Crest every Wednesday.
Yep.
You'll see that we're at Teddy Gallagher's on Tuesday, et cetera, et cetera. I will also look for other opportunities to try and promote them. I have an email list with over at least 15,000 names over my career. And we'll send out a blast that we're going to be there.
Yeah.
We used to do, and we don't do it anymore for a couple of different reasons, but we used to do text alerts, where if you texted Speed Quiz to whatever it was, I can't remember the number anymore. You were on a VIP list, and every week when we would do the clue on Facebook, we would also send it out to our text network, and it worked pretty well for a little bit, and then COVID hit and we kind of backed away from it.
Yeah.
But we also took a survey and kind of found that a lot of people just didn't really think it was a deal maker or breaker.
Yeah, it was just sort of like vanilla.
And we also did find that a lot of people that enrolled for it for the 10 points quit the next week when we sent out that thing. So
yeah.
It was an expense involved too. I mean, for the database we have, we're paying about $70 a month.
I've played around with doing some tech stuff before, and it's not cheap. Let's talk about specific rounds, and this is kind of a big one with Speed Quizzing hosts. Buzz-in rounds. Do you use them? Why or why not, and how?
A lot of times, what I'll do, for example, is a lot of my places like the general knowledge kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they'll want to do a theme night, like maybe once a quarter or once a month.
Yeah.
Or if it's a special holiday or something like that. Other than that, unless it's a private client that's looking for something specific, I won't do anything that's themed.
What about, just buzzing, even for general knowledge? You do those?
No, I use the traditional platform or multiple choice.
Oh, so keypad. Okay. All right. So you're not using buzz-in rounds, because I started using buzz-in rounds just to sample it back in 2014 when I first started. And I was like, okay, we'll play around with this. We'll see how it works. And at first it wasn't landing. Like, I was just like, it doesn't really make any sense. And then I switched over to Buzz-in Advanced, and I did something that I hadn't done before. I set up my GoPro, and I just recorded trivia from a third person just to see how it went. And then it clicked for me. I was like, okay, I get it. because it's changing up the play style so people can buzz in and give a verbal answer. So it's like it's a dip in between. It's not just entering answers on a keypad. But I was always kind of like, is this really doing anything for the other people? And that buzz in advance round does. That agree disagree is really powerful. And
I've never really played with it enough to be able to do it because, truth be told, I usually to give you more of an insight. Most of my accounts, my minimum amount of teams is about 25.
That's I've got
and that's a lot to have to walk around, especially in some of the spaces I work.
I've got one venue where we regularly do 30 to 50 teams, and and I still do it there. I find that, with with larger groups, I might cut that round down. Instead of doing like 20 questions, I might do 15 or even 10. But it's just, I find that it's like, if there's a host out there, and this is the flag that I wave. If there is a host that's out there that's like, oh, how can I add something that's a different sort of element? I truly think that Buzz in Advanced is what makes speed quizzing as a platform stand apart from everything else that's out there. Everything else. Nobody can touch it. You should experiment. Get crazy one night.
It's something I'm going to look into now, especially. I mean, we just started our fall marketing campaign. We market, and maybe this might be a good transition if we talk about marketing a little bit more.
Yeah,
I market around the school year. Excuse me, because I have a lot of schools in my area, so that might be a good transition for the fall to try something different.
It's a nice. You should really play around with it. Plus, a lot of folks don't realize this. If you're in a place and you're doing, 3 keypad rounds, and it's a good thing, but you're like, I need to be making more. Use Buzz-In as an upsell. Do it once or twice and say, hey, I'm playing around with this. What do you think? And if they're like, that's really cool, it's interesting, people buzz in and it engages them differently in a unique sort of way. Play around with that. You'd be amazed how many people, and then you can upcharge for it. Just, takes a little bit of extra time to put those questions together, and it got to be specific stuff that works. So, we're going to have to go up $25 a week or $50 a week in order to do it. And it's, just another thing to consider. It's just one of those things where I've always been curious what hosts are using it and what hosts aren't. And if they're not, they're just missing the boat. It is just wild.
I'm going to have to give it a try. We're going to have to work on some training for that because, truth be told, I'm more nowadays.
Yep.
I'm more the fill-in guy. Like I have.
Yeah, you have more. Most people are working for you.
Yeah, I have a team of like 6 hosts that work for me right now, and I actually am in the process of recruiting because we're getting a lot of accounts. I have probably 6 communities around me that are college towns.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to begin to see them fill in again. Plus, we also do capitalize around the fall and winter around a lot of holiday parties.
Oh, yeah.
I've made a lot of money with speed quizzing, doing things like small holiday parties where they're not going out to a venue or a restaurant. They're actually bringing lunch in. And I'll bring in the Amazon Kindles.
Yep.
With the Fire 7s with the software loaded on it, and I'll actually do a holiday party for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And charge my regular 4-hour rate for just what I would charge to DJ for 2 hours to walk in and just do trivia with them.
Yep.
And
they love it.
They absolutely eat it up and love it because I'll incorporate again.
Yep.
Appropriate stuff, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
There are certain things that I've done in some of my bars that I really can't bring over. Like I can't do Suck and Blow, one of my physical challenge games at a company that sells insurance. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, a post-pandemic world, that is a challenge that should probably disappear for a little while.
Well, yeah. As an example, but I've never considered the Buzz-In rounds before because honestly, I find that any time, and maybe some of the other hosts run into this, I know, you innovate in the western part of the state, and it's the one thing that I keep saying is I got to find a day to come out and just crash in on one of your events.
You should, yeah.
But one of the things I find, especially, for example, the bar that I've had for, about 5 or 6 years now, is they don't like when you change. They don't like I changed the host.
They have this fear.
And I changed the host one night because ironically I had a family emergency.
Yep.
and my phone blew up. I'm sitting in the hospital, and my phone is blowing up going, oh my God, where are you? Blah, 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 blah. And I actually finally said to the host, I said, would you do me a favor and walk to these 5 tables? And please let them know that you're here tonight because I couldn't be, and it was a family emergency.
Yeah.
And again, I try to keep it lighthearted, but at the same time, to try and get them to adjust to change, it's something you have to ease in. Like now, whenever I have a host taking over an account, they have to work with me there for a month.
Yeah.
Just so that I can hand it off to them.
Yeah, exactly.
And by the 4th week, I'm usually sitting at the bar with the regulars, having a soda water with a lime, just making sure that the show goes right. Them and testing them. You know?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. So I got this is sort of a double-headed question, and I'm borrowing this from my other podcast here. But what I'm looking for from you are 2 stories. All right. The first one being like a highlight moment, something that, was your favorite or your best hosting memory from a speed quizzing event, something that you were just like, wow, this is the story that I'm always going to tell. The other one is where it was like the most like nightmare come true. Like one of those. Every SQ host has something that can relate, and I think putting this stuff out there for any hosts that are listening is a great opportunity, one, to learn how you deal with that situation, or how you kind of came through it all, and 2, like that it happens to everybody.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the negative one because it actually just happened not too long ago. Ironically, it happened last night, and it's a combination of issues here, and I have to prelude this with that. And there are some issues going on with this venue that I won't get into too much detail with.
Yep.
But I had set everything up. I had gone through all my questions. Now, earlier this year, I had downloaded a set of questions, and for some reason, I could not load them. And this is a place where I have to keep things family friendly.
Oh, yeah.
So remember that, okay?
Yeah.
I have to keep things family friendly at this place no matter what. And I had an issue at the beginning of the season with this particular venue because they are a seasonal place, and I couldn't load questions, and I couldn't figure out what to do. So I actually wound up switching to a different format completely that wasn't speed quizzing this one.
Yeah.
And this is also a place where the clientele, it's not a bar, but the clientele tend to be very vocal with the management when things are going wrong. And not just with me.
Are you trying to say basically what you're saying is they're whiners?
Well, yeah. But also I will say this, it's a resort, and it's not like, you're paying a pretty penny industry-wide to go to this place.
Going to the management, sir, the trivia guy told me I was wrong.
And I can't have that. Buffy, gather your things.
Let me prelude that last week I had a fill-in host, and whenever it's not me, that's always an issue. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And he had a little bit of a technical issue that wound up working out, but I get a phone call. I was actually out of town, and I got a phone call from the management there at that particular moment. And I'm like, you know what? I'll square it away when I get back. And I thought I'd smoothed everything over.
Yeah.
The lovely geniuses at Microsoft apparently had done an update at some point between the time I had put everything together and 7:42 last night. Because when I set everything up at 7, everything worked fine. I did my sound check. I went over to the snack bar to go grab something to eat. I came back. People are coming in at 7:42, and I go to turn the music on, and my screen is completely frozen. Completely frozen.
Yep.
And I discovered that there's an update when I reboot. And some of those updates are, they take a little bit.
Some of them take an excruciating amount of time. So it's a gamble.
Took about 40 minutes.
Oh, that's light. That's light. Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Still, 40 minutes is 40 minutes.
My start time's 8 o'clock. Now, remember, there was a little bit of a hiccup last week.
Yep.
Plus, I wasn't there last week. So this week, people are coming in, and they're all coming up going, I can't log on. And I'm explaining to them, you can't log on because I have to reboot the computer, and it's going to take a few minutes. So I immediately jump into a game that I call Bag of Crap.
Yep. Bag of Crap. Okay.
Now, Bag of Crap is game that I used to do when I actually used to work at a radio station in Maine when we used to do happy hour, where I'd be like, you're going to be the first one to come up and show me this. And it's like a scavenger hunt. So I'm handing out random points and I'm writing down the points, but in between each one, while people are going through their stuff, trying to find this stuff, I'm walking back up to the stage, looking at my computer and going, okay, 75%, we're almost there. Okay, beautiful. Okay, points. The next thing we're looking for is this. Walking back up. Okay, we're at 82%. Now, on a regular night at this particular place, and again, I'm getting a little long-winded here, but there's a point. On a regular night at this place, it's a lot of people who don't play regularly. It's first-timers. Like 90% of the people that come in are there for the week, and this is their first time playing. So it takes a little time on a regular night to just get them onto the app and get them going.
Yeah.
One of the staff that was off duty got upset because I made them change their team name because it was inappropriate.
Yeah.
Basically, it was Jack, and you could put the rest of the last name together to figure out why it was inappropriate.
Oh, was it like Mehoff?
Yeah, Jack Mehoff.
That's
right?
fucking great.
And
what's wrong with that?
So, well, when you've got 5-year-olds running around, yeah, you get it.
Yeah.
So,
hey, I most of mine, I'm not really that bad with it, but I have a team called Erectile Projectiles. So
you guys have no idea. It's tame as hell. Go on.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, I've also, we do family friendly. The whole family's playing this game. So I start at 8:20.
Yep.
Okay.
You're scheduled to start for 8, right?
Well, the start time is 8. I usually start my first question about 8:10.
Oh, okay. All right. So
because I still have to get everybody online. 8 o'clock is when I'm playing music and I'm trying to help people get online.
Gotcha.
So I started about 8:20.
That's not
apparently this staff member, because at about 8:15 I had told them to change the name, went and texted the person that hired me.
Yeah.
In management.
God. Yeah.
Now, again, second week in a row, right? Last week they had an issue. I heard about it. So the assistant activities director shows up afterwards. And I guess the big issue I had with the whole thing is it's like, I've done stuff for the staff complimentary at this place.
Yes.
And never had a problem. And it came down to, and we determined this last night, that they were pretty upset because I made them change their name.
Yeah, basically.
And
they're being passive aggressive.
And backstab me on it.
That's shitty. That's real shitty. I've had similar shit with people in the past like that, where they get petty over the smallest thing, and you just gotta, hey, whatever. And it sucks when it's a staff.
Yeah,
exactly. Best night stories. I got to be honest with you. I don't have a set best night story.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you what makes up a lot of the great nights I've had. Obviously, the crowd, right?
Yep.
I do have a pretty good best night story because it wound up being something that won the crowd over for me that night. Every physical challenge we had done cookie face, the Oreo cookie thing where you put it on your forehead.
Yeah, classic.
To your mouth.
Yep.
That was one of our things. But there was a guy at the bar that was just, he was pounding something, and honestly, it had to have been gasoline because he was pretty drunk. And there's a question in the Speed Quizzing Library about Barbie.
Yep.
And basically the answer is Barbie's niece's name is Skipper or something like that. Anyway,
I think I remember this question.
We had given away a trip. Back then, we used to work with this company where we would have 3-day, 2-night vacation packages that we gave away.
Oh yeah,
and we gave away a couple of those, which was pretty cool that night because a lot of the challenges I was doing were more difficult. Well, I do this question about Skipper, and all right, the correct answer is Skipper, and the winning team, the team that got it first, is Team Blue. And all of a sudden you hear from the other end of the bar, hey, Siri says that question's wrong. And he's holding up his phone. He's drunk. He can't even stand up.
Yeah.
And I guess the reason why it was a victory is it was one of the better ways I've handled a heckler. I turned around and I go, so apparently you're here by yourself, right? He said, yeah. I said, why don't you ask Siri for a date and sit the hell down?
Hang on.
And the entire place.
What happened?
That was awesome.
I've used a few other ones. Me and Rob used drops. I used a couple drops. I have Hank Hill. Why is she still talking? Or I've asked the staff to bring them either crayons and a placemat so they can something to do, or a Midol.
The best one I've done. I used to carry a small thing of Pampers. And I would go and put it on their table.
There you go.
And again, I think for the people listening, you can get away with a lot of this stuff if you know your crowd and you're in a bar. If you're in a senior center or in a corporate event, not so much.
It's a different animal,
I think the big part about that also is if you don't make an example of them, other people think they can do it as well.
That too. Yep. That too. Anytime I compare it a lot to the way a comedian would deal with a heckler. Like most times a heckler might come at the comedian at like a 2 or a 3 and the comedian goes at them at like an 11 because you have to bulldoze them. And if you don't, like I can remember there was one time where what was it? I have a thing that, and I've seen other hosts, use this as well, but I have, I started doing this a long time ago. I created what's called the bitch tax. And generally speaking, when somebody has an issue with a question that I've done, or maybe I've made a mistake or something like that, essentially, if they interrupt me and I have a microphone in my hand, they're going to lose 20 points. No matter what, they're just going to lose 20 points. And I have a tendency of going from nice, mild manner, whatever, to barking like a junkyard dog at a heckler when they lay into me. And I remember this one night, the bartender says to me, like, at the end of the night, we're packing up, and everything's great. Everybody's happy, having a good time. And she hadn't experienced that yet. And she was like, hey, I've never seen you react to somebody like that. That was crazy. And I looked at her dead in the face, and I was like, it's hot, ain't it? And she just had a good laugh, and I was just like, I explained the same thing. I go, you gotta like come at them like a freight train, or otherwise somebody else is going to get the idea that you can be walked all over. And if you don't shut them up immediately, somebody else is going to chime in, and it's going to become a huge mess.
It's funny. I told you the bad story. There were a couple. I look at a lot of my events as there's always a victory, and there's always something you can do better, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Like there's always something. So in the midst of last night, and again, not knowing that I had a complaint going on, I'd done a question and the answer was Pluto. It's about a planet. And I had a guy who kept on arguing with me that
Pluto's not a planet.
Right. So it was the last question before 10-minute Simon Says.
Yep.
He was the first one I made sure was eliminated.
Yeah.
And if you do Simon Says, even if you're doing it outside of speed quizzing, you learn rather quickly that if somebody's giving you a hard time, you come up with ways, you focus on them to get rid of them.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times they don't even see it coming. But you and I have talked about the bitch tax before, and that's something that, in looking at how I'm going to move forward with things, because it is time to shake things up. And I try to shake things up with my different accounts. And, we're coming up with a new format where we're going to do 15 questions. And then the next round is going to be a 1-point question where if you get it right, you get the points. But if you get it wrong, you lose the points. And I don't use evil mode that often because I again, when I first started doing this, I didn't have the network I have now to be able to bounce stuff off of. And even just with you guys, we talk offline often and I get different ideas about stuff. And it's like, okay, I need to find time to be able to implement that a little bit more.
Yeah.
But you learn really quickly how to handle yourself a little bit better. When I hire trivia hosts and I hire people that work for me, I tell people all the time, you need to have a thick skin, and you need to realize that in today's world, especially, I did an interview last week.
Yep.
And she was a teacher, and she had a parent in the middle of a parent meeting get in her face. And I said, in today's world, you have to be prepared for somebody to go Will Smith on you.
Yeah, you do.
And it's unfortunate, but we've reached a point now where, again, love him or hate him, Will Smith has kind of opened that door. Not that it's really ever going to happen, but it's not out of the question that it wouldn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know who started that? Wayne Brady on the Chappelle Show.
Yes, he
Wayne
did.
Brady gonna have to smack a bitch.
Yeah,
It's very true. It's very, very true. That's freaking bananas, dude. This is really good, Rob. This is awesome, man. Really, 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 really good
I'm
stuff.
glad you guys have me on. I mean, the one thing I try to tell people, because the one thing I will say is, I would like to think that I've been doing this in this area, and you guys have the records on how long I've been doing this technically, and when I bought in and everything. A lot of people who are looking to buy speed quizzing tend to call me to ask me about how it works and you know how much money I've made. And I'm an open book, and I've been an open book for as long as I've been getting up and sharing what I know within the DJ industry.
Yeah.
I will help everybody. And, that's kind of why when this opportunity came up, I'm like, I would love to come on and chat with you guys. Because first of all, we live, the three of us, within a 150-mile radius, and we rarely see each other except when we're out in Vegas.
Pretty much, yeah. Although, is there possibly a better place for us to all meet up? I don't think so. I'll meet and hang out in Vegas with you guys anytime.
Yeah, but it's one of those things that it's kind of like when I ran the Bubble Parties program for a long time. I explained to people that this isn't for everybody. There are people who get into this who look at it as, I'm going to make a ton of money with it, and their personality doesn't fit it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They're not tech savvy enough, or they're still operating on the Star Trek style flip phone from 1992, whatever the case may be, right?
Yep.
You have to also be able to take the good and the bad. And that's the one thing I've learned in this job is that if you go in prepared, a lot of, and again, I don't want to bash the restaurant and bar industry.
Yeah.
A lot of restaurant and bar owners will yes you to death to get you in the door thinking you're going to solve all their problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then they don't deliver.
And it's funny, in differing markets, like you out in the western part of the state, Rob, have a ton of following. Like you've got people, I know you've got people that follow you from place to place to place.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of my venues are regulars.
Yep.
I maybe have had one people from Deanne's, which is the place that I've had for a long time. They will rarely take the ride over to Foxborough to Gillette Stadium to Citizen Crest to come play trivia.
Yeah, exactly.
They're diehards and loyal, which I think is great. It helps with that. But for example, during COVID, we actually, and that's the one saving grace about this particular product, is during COVID, we actually rented out parking lots in shopping malls.
Yep.
And we did parking lot trivia.
Yeah.
Where we charged a fee. We didn't charge them all. We charged a fee for you to play. It was like $25 a car. And we set up a big screen, and we set up a sound system, and we set up speed quizzing in the parking lot, and it was open to 25 cars. And you came in and you played speed quizzing in the parking lot, and it was the coolest. It was a night out for some people.
Yeah. It's a novel idea, really, when you think about it.
When we all had to be socially distant, it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was being creative and unique like that got my
very creative. Yeah.
COVID.
No, that's
that and the hot dog carpet. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. I'm telling you, man, you had an opportunity to be DJ Glizzy, and you. I'm telling you, it would have been something else. You and the Vulgar Chef, you could have gone and collabed. It would have been magical.
We could have. We could have. But DJ. Now it's funny because the bulk of my business model now is I'm still taking certain events. Like I'm finishing up COVID weddings still.
Yeah.
And I've got weddings into 2023.
Yep.
But the focus of our business at this point, because of other things that I'm doing now, is going to be I'm going to run a trivia company. I'm going to run a game show company.
Yep.
And the cool thing about it is I've put together a pretty good team of people that can go out and, without the technical issues, can go out and knock it out of the park.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome, man.
The one piece of advice I'll give anybody that's going to be an owner in this and looking to expand and be a multi-op is something that is something that I think is really important. You can train people to push buttons, right?
Yeah.
Like you can train people how to run the software. You cannot train people to stand up in front of a crowd and be fun and funny, and even in some cases be a pit bull when they have to be.
Yeah, exactly. The only way you can do it is through doing it, like experience, you know? And that's what, like, I've been saying it since we started representing SQ at the trade shows from the beginning. I was like, if you've got new hires, if you're a multi-op and you have new hires and you want them in the wedding business and you want them to be great in the wedding business, and they're not as skilled when it comes to being on the mic and handling announcements and handling a crowd or speaking to a crowd just in general, this is like boot camp. You put them on a trivia night. Now you've got them, you know, for 2 hours every single week until they're up and ready. They build up that confidence. They build up the mic skills. They build up everything that's required to be a really great MC. And, you know, I say it all the time as well, that this is just a referral machine for, especially for weddings, because you could be a great DJ, but if as your DJ, if your announcements are, thanks everybody, I just want to make a few announcements here, you know, and they're just weak, and you don't hold that crowd and get their attention, you can't put that direction out to motivate a crowd to, you know, get out, you know, out from the bar into their seats or something for the next transition. You know, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Yeah. You know, it's no good. So this is a great way to kind of get yourself up to speed, where you're at least comfortable. Like, throw a microphone in my hand. Excellent. You know,
it's an awesome training tool in the relative scheme of things. It gives you that skill set of being able to handle when the crowd isn't responding the right way. Yeah. Or if you've got a heckler, which, let's be honest, they're few and far between, but they're out there.
Oh, they certainly are.
And, you know, the one thing I will say that's another big advantage about this program is you learn, if you want to survive. I guess the big thing is, if you want to survive, put your wait staff on your team, but also get to know your regular people.
Yes,
get to know the
100%.
people that are coming in. Like, I have one team, and it's funny, when I hosted the place at Patriot Place called Citizen Crust. I started the place, and I've actually transitioned it over to somebody who is handling it the majority of me. But again, I'm the filling guy.
Yeah.
So when they need vacation, it's great because I show back up. Hey, how are you? I have a team called the Cake Pops, which is pretty cool. It's 3 young women, and they come in every week. And it's funny because if they don't show up before 7 o'clock,
people ask about them.
No. You know you have to wait 5 minutes because they never miss a week.
Oh, okay.
And unless they tell you, right?
Yeah.
But
Those
I know
are the
when
best.
their birthdays are. I know one of them just got engaged, and I booked their wedding off of it. So get to know your players.
Oh, yeah.
And
they'll be your best clients.
You don't have to be chummy with them. You don't have to. And by all means, I highly don't recommend sitting down and drinking with them after the show.
No.
Keep a line between you as the host.
100%.
And I had that problem with the host for a little while, where he would show up early and be drinking with everybody, and having dinner with them, and then he would get up and host.
And it was just a mess.
You know, it was funny because that team won a couple of weeks, and I was getting phone calls from the owner going, listen, I've got people that are leaving because of the fact that he keeps eating with this team, and they've won over the past 2 weeks. It's all about it's all about your perception.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right, man.
Was he helping them, or was it just they were a good team?
I confronted him because I said, listen, we give a free answer.
Yeah.
And he goes, honest, I wasn't helping him. And you know, I want to take him at his word, because I tell my people at the end of the day, you know what? I'm gonna find out if you're blowing smoke up my ass.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
what I mean? Like, I'm gonna find out the real truth if you're not going to tell me. And I've earned the respect of the people that work for me enough that anybody who has been misleading or dishonest usually doesn't last long around here.
Yeah.
And they were a good team for those 2 weeks, but I explained to him, I said, you need to understand how this looks.
That's exactly it. This is a bad look for what we're doing. Like, you gotta make it seem like you're impartial, you know, as much as you can. And I think that most regulars that follow you to your games will understand that. You know, it's just the way it is. It's kind of nuts.
But if you get to know your regulars enough that you know them by name, And, I will walk up and joke every now and then.
Yeah.
Hey, I haven't seen you guys in a week or two. How you doing? Blah, blah, blah. You know what? I'm going to set you up with a round, and I'll go and grab the waitress, and I'll go bring them a round of water.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there they are sitting there thinking that, they're
getting a bunch of free drinks
here. And all of a sudden the waitress will walk up and hand down water and go, these are on Rob. And you just got to be playful and have some fun. That's the one thing. If you take this way too seriously, you're not going to survive. And I guess we have the best job in the world in this line of work.
We do.
Where we can have fun and be playful. And you know what? We can make some pretty good money doing it too.
No, absolutely, man. That's great. Rob, this is really, really great, man. If you have anything coming up that you want to plug before we wrap it up, go for it. Moment's yours.
I got to be honest with you. I really don't have a whole heck of a lot going on right now.
Isn't that a nice feeling, though?
It's a great feeling. We are working on, I will be at Mobile Entertainment Expo next year. I just don't know yet if we're speaking or if I'm just going to be out there hanging out. I mean, obviously, if I'm going to be out there hanging out, I've always told people I can be bought for a beverage, lunch, or a cup of coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to come and pick my brain, you want to learn more about how this works, you want some great ideas, or you want to get together and have a meal, and maybe there's 4 or 5 of us as hosts sitting around throwing this stuff around, I'm definitely open to it. But I don't have a lot going on right now industry-wide. I've kind of, like I said, I've got some other stuff going on outside the industry that I'm kind of focused on right now. But I am working on some stuff for the next year or two to be able to contribute. So I would just say stay tuned.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
Look for my headshot. That's all.
There you go. Thank you, dude. We appreciate it, man. Good having you on.
No problem. Keep up the good work with the platform too. Like I said, I've made a lot of money with this. And I encourage anybody that's never considered it.
Yep.
Ask a couple of hosts. If you don't want to ask somebody in your market, go on to the Facebook group and just network with some people and ask them questions and feel free to pick their brains a little bit. And as hosts, don't be shy about your competitor coming up to you and asking you for help. And I guess that's one of the things I want to leave with before we wrap up today, guys, is they're not going to steal everything because there's only one you. And nobody can duplicate your personality.
That's exactly it.
So if you run a good business, and believe me, I've had competitors out there try to pull the rug out from underneath me. But you know what? If you run your business the right way and you treat your customers right and you go out there and do a great job, you're not going to have much to worry about.
No, 100% true, man.
So
awesome, dude.
Cool.
No, this was...
Guys, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Welcome, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it, dude. You have a good one.
Thanks. You too.
All right. Take care.
See ya.
I don't have my camera on, so Bill couldn't see me dancing my ass off to that intro, but it's all good. Guys, that was great having Rob on the show. Appreciate you, Rob. Always a good time to hear from you and figure out what you've got going. He's got all kinds of stuff going. If he's not fixing you a glizzy or he's out there doing what he's got to do. Bill shut his camera off, and I'm starting to get scared. So it was always great to hear from Rob. That was awesome. But I did promise that when we got back from this little segment that we would talk about our game segments. And
quick question. I turned my camera off. Is Pornhub spelled with a capital P or? Oh, sorry. We're recording.
I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters. I don't know what is it you're doing over there?
I was trying to see how you put a photo up. I'm trying to figure out how that's I could make a photo for me. Sorry.
Oh,
my ADHD kicked in and I was like, I want to do that.
I want to do what he's doing.
Yeah.
Oh, so I promised you guys we would talk about our game formats, and what I love about this is that this is really going to put you guys in, give you a little bit of perspective that Bill and I do things completely differently. Why don't you go ahead and walk through your format, Bill, and any kind of changes or anything that you've made over the last 4 or 5 years, things that kind of like your signature game.
Oh, signature game. So I know some I don't do. I'm going to get hate for this from some people, but I don't do 100% theme games. I feel they don't build anything. unless it's for a corporate, I'll do a corporate that way. But at my weekly stuff, I don't do 100% themed games because I feel they just draw out a handful of people for that one game and they never come back until I do something else. I don't want people like that. I want weekly players. So I do a few things a little differently. My first round is always keypad. I have ADHD, so I level out my games where I just have, they're all math problem. Multiple choice first letter, or number or something like that, or sequence, then a picture. So every fifth photo is a picture, blah, blah, things a photo. And that round is normally like a 4 points apiece, go wides on, 1 point speed bonus. And then I do a music round now, which is QQ, or audio, full audio, 15 questions of just music questions, 6 points apiece, go wides on, 3 points, 4 point sliding scale for the top 4 teams. Don't lose points, whatever. And then I do a nearest win of 20 points. Then I do a buzz-in round, 10 points apiece, with a few little features that I learned from you that we don't have to get into, so that we can be whatever. But then I go to I do what I call the Wheel of Rounds every week. And I start with a 6-week run of rounds, 6 rounds. They all vote on them. And then I have a wheel, and I just spin it. It's a digital wheel on my computer. And whatever round it lands on, we do that round this week. So it's 15 questions normally, and that's normally a 10-point go wides on and 3-point sliding scale. And then I do a 30-point nearest win. And then I ended my game on a final keypad round of 10 points apiece, 3 points, sliding scale, go wides on. But I also use fast tracking in questions 1 through 15. And I don't use it the traditional way where if the top 3 teams don't get it right, you can fast track. I only use it as if you're the only team to get it right without going wide in the final round, in questions 1 through 15, you can jump the first place by 1 point.
Yeah.
Makes it a little harder.
Yep.
And then I end on a 50-point nearest win. That's it.
There you go. That's awesome. There's a couple things that we do see eye to eye on, like the theme thing, for example. I try to not do a full theme game ever, primarily because general knowledge will level the playing field. And, I sell theme nights as a separate service completely. So if somebody wants to do a theme night in one of my regular venues, it's basically seen as a completely different night. It's a completely different night. It involves additional promotion to target that audience, because I explain to the person who I'm working with that this is not about engaging the people that we have here. In fact, the regulars that come in might get a little irritated because we're focusing on a theme. So I usually suggest that we do this on another night entirely. And then do it.
Yeah, that's the reason I do my themes like small.
Yep.
Because someone's like, "Oh, I'm not going to do good at it." Well, at least it's not the whole game.
That's exactly it.
Also, if I did a whole game, I would love to do a whole Star Wars game or something like that.
Sure.
But it's going to be for a handful of people, and my regulars are going to be like, "Yeah, I'll just see you next week."
This is not for us. So I look at it as I'm targeting new people to come in and try to play, in the hopes of retaining a few that have a good time to come to the general knowledge nights, and that's as good as it's going to get. Like that's pretty much it. As far as retaining people after they've played, if you have 100 people that walk in, there's 2 that might stick around for your next event. There's value in those 2. If they become regulars, then that's a great thing, and that's what I explain to the folks. But my format has changed. I have always been I try to keep it level across the top for the most part. Offer opportunities to get extra points throughout the game, and I try to at the end have like that carrot at the end to try to that light at the end of the tunnel, So I'm gonna when I get to our final round 3, I'm gonna explain how I used to do it and then how I've changed it to make it work, and I actually like it a little bit better now. So with all that said, here we go. I start my game with a keypad round. Okay, general knowledge, 20 questions. It's the point structure is set up. It's been this way for like 7 or 8 years. It's basically a 10-point value for each question with go wide as an option. So it's either 5 points or 10, depending if they take a second guess or not. The speed bonus is only 3 points, but it's 3 points with a sliding scale, meaning that if you don't go wide, you can get 13 points per question. If you do go wide on those questions, the most points you'll get is 8. I do that because I want folks that don't go wide but don't get the speed bonus to get a little credit that way. So I've set it up so that way, like, if you take the opportunity to go wide, you're kind of kicking yourself in the ass. Like, it makes people think a bit more before they hit an answer. That's round number one. I follow that up with one bonus opportunity, and that bonus is Speed Bingo. And I've only been doing this bonus since Speed Bingo has been around. And Speed Bingo is kind of polarizing. Some people love it. Most people seem to not really use it a whole lot. But I do one round of Speed Bingo, and I set it up for a single line of bingo. We go through it, and I set it at 30 points. This is sort of that wild card, where whoever gets the bingo gets a 30-point bump right at the end of round one before we go into the second round. It's helpful. Sometimes it can stir up a lot of drama too, especially if the first place team gets it. That happens. It happens from time to time, and it does definitely get people on the edge of their seat. We take a break, about 10 minutes or so. We come back, and I get into the Buzz in Advanced round. This has been this way since I started the game. Buzz in Advanced is what I feel is like the house wine of speed quizzing. This is what the signature dish. This is what they're known for. For those that don't know what Buzz in Advance is all about, the buzzer buttons are on the device. Essentially, I ask a question. If a team wants to answer or take a guess, they tap their screen. I have a little fun with this round where I do 10 questions that are done as Name That Tune for the most part, or maybe a themed picture round. It fluctuates from time to time. Most times, though, I'm well known for using music. So we'll do Name That Tune or Name That Artist. I come up with a funky playlist. Sometimes, if I've done a wedding previously, I'll just go through the requests that have come through from that wedding and riff off of that. Sometimes the players that have been amazing enough to book me as their wedding DJ, I'll actually go back through their notes and create those songs and then promote that night. You know, most of the times a lot of these songs are the same, but it's the ones that aren't are the ones that I choose, the unique ones. So I have a good time with this. That's just another way to kind of like engage players that maybe I haven't seen in a little while. Well, they're definitely going to show up when I play their wedding songs. You know, I come up with some sort of a playlist. I construct it. I have a few fan favorites that are always fun. Most of the time they're tongue-in-cheek. I try to stay away from doing any one artist or any one genre too often. I really try to mix this up with some kind of a funky theme. And I don't even promote the theme. I've found that it's better if I don't, because if I promote the theme, I'll give you an example. One time I used the theme and it was Richard Cheese. He does parody songs. And what I found was that people would just like hit Spotify hard day of the quiz and listen to the entire library over and over and over again. And it takes the fun out of it, because that's what that segment, those 10 questions I do in the second round, that's what it's for. So in Buzz in Advance, basically you ask a question, the team will buzz in. The fastest team to tap their screen, here's their buzzer sound. I call on that team, they give me a verbal answer. I repeat that answer for the players. Once I've done that, I will then go ahead and start a 10-second timer. During the music round, they get to hear 10 more seconds of the song. During the general knowledge portion, I'll get to that in a moment, they hear the standard countdown. During that 10-second window, the teams who want to agree tap their screens. The teams that don't want to agree, they don't touch their screens. Simple. Points get awarded if the answer is correct to the team who buzzes in, and then half that amount of points gets awarded to the teams that either agreed if it was correct or the ones that disagreed if it was wrong. And the kicker is that the agreeing and disagreeing teams never lose points. That's only for a team that gives us a one of those answers. And it happens. It definitely happens. Now, what I like to do is this. The music round, a lot of folks get hung up on this. That first round, whatever the theme is, they get hung up on, I don't know 90s hip-hop. My God, we're going to tank. It's this next round that I just started doing within the last couple of years, and I love it. I take and I switch to a general knowledge, Buzz in Advanced. I only use 10 of the questions, and I double the points. Now they're worth 20 points apiece. So every time you buzz in, you're effectively gambling with 20 points now. You'll get 20 points if you're right, but you're going to lose 20 points if you're wrong. And the agreeing and disagreeing teams, their points are going to double up as well. They're going to get 10 points now if they agree or disagree the right way. So that has a lot more impact on the scoreboard. And at that section of the game, it's a great way to kind of do it. Now, what I do, and this is probably the number one thing that I've kind of gotten known for in the area with my trivia events, is I do a challenge after the buzz-in round. What I'll do is I'll use a nearest wins question, and I set it for 25 points. And I'm going to explain how I get 25 points. I leave it at 30. That's what I do. I leave it at 30, all right? Keep that in mind. What I do is this. I tell the team that whoever gives me the number closest to the correct answer, even if they go over, is going to get a 25-point bonus. What happens is this. Remember, I've left the points at 30. What happens is this. That team also has an opportunity to do a challenge. The reason why nearest one wins is magic is there can only be one winner. So it's basically a team selector is really what it is. Team gives me that answer. That team then has an opportunity to perform a challenge. And the trick is they get to double their bonus points to 50 if they get the challenge correct. If they don't complete the challenge, they're going to stay at the 25 points that they've earned. So I use a number of different challenges. I'm not going to get into all of them. There's one specifically that I use a lot. In fact, it's to the point where I'm just so done with it. I really am. And what happens is that team will either win points. Now, they've won 30 points for that question. If they complete the challenge, I just made it easier on myself. I only have to add 20 points. If they don't get the challenge, I deduct 5, and they're right where they should be. So that's where that 30 points comes from. You can't select 25 points. It's an even number. So you're kind of stuck, with that. So that's why I leave it at 30. It just makes for an easier transition. I get into the question and we're good to go. We take another break. We come back for our final round. Now, this is where I'm going to explain how the final round used to work and then now how it works. So the way I used to do it was I ran a 20-question keypad style round, no option for a second guess and no evil mode. They just get one guess and one guess only. I set the point value for 10. So every time they're correct, they get 10 points. But the speed bonus here increases. It increases to 5 points on a sliding scale. So 5 points additional if you're the fastest correct answer, and the runners-up will get 4 through 1 respectively. That seems to work out. The math works out nice. I tell people that at this point now, this round has more points than any one individual portion, and I use that word specifically, portion, instead of round, in any game. Because those 10 high-stakes buzz in advance questions, the maximum amount of points you could get there is 200. In round 3, the maximum amount of points that you can get there, barring any fast tracks or anything, is 300. So it's a lot of points. What I do is this. I go through that round, and back in the day, I would use a nearest wins question of 100 points at the end of the game. That nearest wins question was the one that was built into the quiz pack. That would always be the one that I used. Whichever one came along with it, it was at random. I would just ask it and go with it. It generally, for the most part, worked fantastic to do it that way. What made it kind of tricky was I would get people who would complain about the 100-point bonus. Oh, we were up so high. And I started to create sort of the reply to that where it was, you're missing the point. If you're that good, you should have no problem getting a 100-point lead in first place over second place. If you're that good, you should have no problem doing that. And what I would do is it would happen periodically, and I would make a point to announce when I would do the scores right going in. I would say that, this team is isolated right now. Before we do the nearest wins, they can't be taken out of first place. And I still do this, but I've changed the value. So what I do now is I do the same round that I did before with one change. Okay? I do the keypad round, 10 points, 5 points for the fastest correct answer, still only one guess. But now I've incorporated something that are called fast tracks on the 5s. That means that fast tracks, and while I allow fast tracks in round number 1 on any question, it's only 4 specific questions in round number 3. It's every 5th one, 5, 10, 15, and 20. The way I run a fast track is where if the top 3 teams fail to answer on a question, and it's got to be one of those 4 for the third round, if the top 3 teams fail to answer correctly, a fast track will be given to the team that is fastest from below third place. So it sort of puts the onus on those other teams that are in the top to perform and not mess up. And they know when they've messed up because you can see them melt into their seats in disappointment. So it doesn't happen every night. It happens enough where people need to worry about it, but it's not something that happens all the time, and it's not a guarantee for sure. Mm-hmm. We go through the round. At the end of that round, I have now changed my speed bonus to only 30 points. And because of that fast track, what generally usually happens is somebody might get a fast track and they might start to drop slowly down. But when I do those final score readings before the last nearest wins question, I'm doing quick math, looking at that, saying, okay, at this point here, in 6th place, if this team gets this next question, they have the opportunity to get into the top 3. If our 5th place team, they could steal 2nd place, and then so on and so forth. And it builds that sort of, I guess, it stirs the pot a little bit and kind of puts more pressure on those teams that are up front. And it's those little instances that build excitement and doing, even though it's only 30 points, it still could potentially, if it's a close game, it could be anybody's game. That's the idea. So that's how I run my game right there. I always have a separate folder that I've created of nearest wins questions that I've never used except for tiebreakers. And I use those when I have to do a tiebreaker. Basically, if we have a tie that's in the top 3, I isolate everybody's device. I block everybody's device, and I open up the 2 that are an issue. And then we do a nearest wins for 2 points. And that's it. That's how I do my games.
Well, so like we're talking about fast tracking.
Yeah.
And so I do. Some people are like, I don't like fast tracking because if I'm winning, blah blah blah, I can lose because someone can jump. It's not why I end fast tracking on question 15 out of 20.
Yeah.
But I also say it doesn't happen very often. And traditionally, I don't mean to be mean, but if a team gets fast tracked, they don't normally stay in the lead.
No. Most times they're going to drift back down.
Correct.
Some of them do all right.
Another thing I forgot, talking about like returning players, I wanted to bring that up.
Mm-hmm.
I do at my games. I brought it back after COVID, but I was in before. I do like a little certificate that says first place, fast smartest team or whatever, and then I have one for last place called the holding the rear award.
I love that,
and it gives them 50 points for the next time they come in. And the reason I do that is because sometimes it's a new team, they don't know what's going on, or it's a team that's like, hey, they'll use it next time or something. They just tell me whatever. And I go, and all it does is create return players.
Yeah.
Because if you have a team that isn't, but 90% of my teams don't win very often at all. It's the same couple teams most often, but they all come back week after week just because they just want to have fun.
Yeah. Ultimately, there's multiple reasons to do trivia. One could be that you want to provide somebody with a real serious game experience that's based on intelligence or retaining information or what it might be. The other side of it is the fun side of it. And there's it's not digital, like you're doing one or the other. It's analog. Your game will be a mix of those two things of how they work out. So, take that advice or take that example of how we run our games, apply it to your own. If you want to change up your points, then, go for it. It's totally, totally, totally up to you.
See what works. Everyone plays with their own. You mess around. What works best for you? Yep. I've changed my scores a ton of time. Throughout the years, but it's because I figured, this can help some people move. This can help. And if you stay with the same game and you're not constantly just doing little tweaks here and there,
it gets stale.
But you can always improve. Yes, you're also going to get the people that are like, hey, how about you do this? And I'm like, no.
Yeah, lots of times that comes from a place, too, where that player is looking at their own experience and their own best interest. Like, you should do a round that's all about NFL football, but specifically from 1964 to 1966 only.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just like, no, I'm good.
Yeah. What can you do? Anyway, I have an idea for the next week's show. I would love to share some horror stories. So, Bill, I'm going to actually hold you a little bit accountable for this to remind me that that's where we're going. I think it would be great if you guys have some horror stories with just, maybe you just... Maybe it went to blows in the parking lot. Maybe, something like that with a player that's just been like, son of a bitch. Or hecklers. How do you handle them? Let's talk about that next week. I have a couple of great stories that we'll go over. I'm sure that Bill does as well. Actually, I remember having phone calls with Bill some of those nights.
The teaser. I'll give you the teaser on mine.
Okay.
I dragged this guy out of the venue.
That's
leave it at that.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Let's go ahead and wrap this show up, guys. We will see you all next episode on the 10-Second Podcast. Thanks so much for checking it out. Remember, if you have any actual issues with speed quizzing that need some immediate attention, get in touch with us. Look us up. Our number is on the speed quizzing website. As always, if you're having an issue with an activation or something, and it's something you can cancel on your own, just as a reminder, we will always be willing to work with you after the fact. Don't worry about it. We've never let anybody hang as far as activations that were unused or something like that. We'll work it all out. Have yourselves a great one, everybody. Good luck with your games. Hope they're all packed, and let's go make some money. We'll see you guys next time.
All right.